Tamam, ben İngilizce kanalındayım şu anda. Okay, tamam. Hello Eddie, it's nice to see you again and thanks for joining us. So Eddie is the director of Rising Voices and he's located in Bolivia. And today he'll be talking about grassroots movement for endangered languages, digital activism with examples from South America, if I'm not mistaken. Yes? So, okay, please go ahead, Eddie. Thank you.
Can you see the screen? Sorry.
Yes, we can, but with
okay.
thumbnail in the...
Let me,
okay.
1 second, please.
İngilizce kanalında konuşacak
yani. Are you in the English channel? Are you in the English part?
I think I'm in no channel.
So okay. If you go, he should be in the English channel, doesn't he? Shouldn't he?
Well, there are two channels at the moment. One of them is English and the other one is Chinese.
Right, but you can be in the off channel basically. So if you go like bottom right, Eddie, on Zoom, right? Right next to record, you're gonna see the basically the language selection. What is it called? Not transcription.
Yeah, interpretation. Yes.
Yeah, interpretation. Right. So if you choose English, it will be great, basically.
And okay, everybody else who wants to listen to the speech in Turkish, please switch it into Chinese.
Okay. And so for the question, for the Q&A, I'll hear the Turkish translation in English. Okay, got it.
Yep, exactly.
You'll stay in the English channel.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay. Tunaydın, hopefully I said that correctly. Good afternoon. I'm extremely pleased to be here with you today. Many thanks to the organizers, especially for providing me more information about the work that you do. I think it's really exciting and important to open up these channels of communication where we can learn from one another. As was said previously, my name is Eddie Avila. I'm the Rising Voices Director at an organization called Global Voices. We're a network of writers, translators, academics, digital rights activists that are working to use the internet to build bridges. I'm currently based in Bolivia in South America. And today I'll be speaking about language digital activism and how language communities around the world, especially in Latin America, are leveraging the internet, digital media, and technology to promote their language online. And in turn, to attract new generations of speakers that are excited to see their language and culture reflected on the internet. Rising Voices has been working to support communities since 2007. And I'd like to start with a story that recounts this early experiences with using the internet to promote indigenous languages online. So for more than 3 decades, migrants from the indigenous community Aymara have been moving from their homelands in the remote areas of the Altiplano in Bolivia to El Alto, which is a city of around 1 million people. And often these are, the migrants move to the city to seek a better life for their families. And as with most experiences with migration, the degree to which Aymara people hold onto their language and culture in their new surroundings is influenced by unanswered questions about acculturation and assimilation. So in 2007, I first learned of these experiences from university students in El Alto, who recounted how well-meaning parents often discourage their children from maintaining or learning their mother language of Aymara. Hoping for better educational or job prospects, they push their children to learn Spanish or even other languages like English. And at the same time, because of discrimination against migrant families, many young people refuse to speak Aymara in public. Thankfully, that is now changing. So that same year in 2007, I got together with 2 Bolivian bloggers, to start the Bolivian Voices project, which aimed to teach people how they could represent themselves online and on their own terms, using blogs, websites, and other internet-based tools. So during the first series of workshops, one university student came up to us and asked whether she could write her personal blog in the Aymara language. Naturally, the answer was yes. Each blog was a personal space for free expression, which also included choices about language. That student's Aymara language blog was likely the first of its kind in the Aymara language, and it opened the door for more people from El Alto to create and share digital content in their mother language. So during the next series of workshops, more students from the linguistics department at the public university signed up for the workshops, eager to discover the possibilities of communicating in Aymara. Out of those initial workshops, the students formed a group called Hakearu, which means voice of the people in Aymara, determined that the next generation of Aymara speakers would not experience the same online invisibility of their mother language that they once did. These pioneers set about building the body of content in Aymara using simple digital tools like blogs, social media, audio and video, as well as Wikipedia. This early work caused a ripple effect. At a local conference held in Cochabamba, the city where I'm living now, in 2011, members of that collective Hakearu presented their work. In the audience was a young man named Ignacio Tomicha, who was a young man from the Besiro community in the eastern part of Bolivia, who was so inspired by the work of Hakearu that upon returning home, he started his own project, recording audio podcasts in the Besiro language, sharing them on the internet. Bolivia has 36 official languages that are often referred to as Quechua, Aymara, Guarani, and the rest, and the others. And so Besiro is often included in the others. But Ignacio was determined to raise the visibility of his language and identity online. Though he didn't achieve the same degree of impact as his Aymara colleagues on the other side of the country, whose success was helped by a number of factors. So in El Alto, there's a strong university population of Aymara descent who helped to grow the online presence in the Aymara language. El Alto is one of the most digitally connected cities in Bolivia, despite having a smaller middle class compared to other urban areas. So with this critical mass of digitally savvy speakers, the Aymara was uniquely poised to take advantage of the internet for its revitalization. But the experience has also demonstrated to other initiatives across the region how peer learning and knowledge sharing could play an important role in this kind of work. According to UNESCO's Language Vitality and Endangerment Scale, factors that determine the health of a language include intergenerational language transmission, response to language use in new domains and media, and community attitudes. This reinforces the idea that the work can indeed play a role in ensuring that the language endures, given the central role technology and the internet play in the lives of the next generation of speakers. So from that experience, we started to work in this field called indigenous language digital activism. So for a lack of a better term, some colleagues in Oaxaca, Mexico, who do similar kinds of work, we started to call it as digital activism, a label that could be controversial in some Latin American countries, where the idea of activism conjures up the image of anti-state activity that could land one in trouble. According to my colleagues, a digital activist doesn't just text or tweet in their native language, but plays a role as the protagonist, seeking to make a broader societal impact. Slowly, we saw this work evolve into an emerging movement built by local and regional networks of young people. These networks have had unique challenges and contexts, but their objectives were similar. How we thought could global voices best support their work? So we built a beta version of a web portal called Activismo Lenguas, which means language activism in Spanish, to map and highlight different projects and initiatives engaged in language-based digital activism. The purpose of the site is to showcase possibilities and inspire others seeking to do similar work with their language. Entries are organized by country, language, and tool or platform, so as users can find all projects, for example, utilizing video, or all the projects working on the Quechua language of Ecuador or the Zapotec language of Mexico. In addition to the website, Global Voices helped co-organize a series of gatherings of digital activists in countries across Latin America, including Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, Guatemala, and Chile. Together with local partners, we facilitate peer learning and exchange, offering skill-building sessions and sharing presentations about social media and other tools, like Wikipedia, memes, among others. These workshops really serve as a foundation for the creation of local networks that can continue on once activists return to their communities. This is especially important as many activists have confessed to feeling quite isolated, believing that they're the only ones interested in this type of work. So meeting face-to-face really helps reinforce the idea of community of peers who are passionate about preservation and revitalization of their languages. We have also experimented with events that focus on a single language. One digital activism workshop hosted by the Quechuashun group in Otavalo, Ecuador, was conducted entirely in the Quechua language. Spending 2 days discussing technology-related topics in Quechua was a powerful demonstration of the language's capacity to embrace new knowledge and ideas. In addition, Rising Voices has helped support and mentored small-scale projects in Argentina, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Mexico. This direct support has allowed us to better understand the challenges facing these language communities and how we can integrate them into local and regional networks. So what might best characterize this digital activism is a do-it-yourself approach. This is a term in English that is often used to describe efforts to build or modify things without the direct aid of experts or professionals. So what we've seen is how young people especially have dived right in, using relatively easy to use digital tools without the need for being a computer programmer or a web developer. I best remember what a friend working with the Aymara language once said. He said that he didn't want to wait around for a non-governmental organization or a government institution to come in and create the digital content in their language for them. Instead, because of urgency of the situation, they wanted to start right away. They didn't want the next generation of language speakers to find the same lack of content that they did. So they learned mainly on their own by experimenting and trying new things. They used trial and error. They started to find their way around many of the platforms to see which ones really made a difference. Since those early days in 2007, 2009, we've seen an increase in the number of projects that are not only adopting digital tools, but they're also adapting them for their own self-determined needs. So here I'm going to show really quick examples of some of the projects we've been mapping, primarily in Latin America, but have some other examples from other parts of the world. So for the last 6 years or so, we've been mapping examples of language digital activism across the Latin America region especially. Many of these examples were referred to us by others, and other projects reach out to us to be included in this directory. And these projects are all using all types of platforms and tools, but ones that they feel that best fit the needs of the community. So the first project is called Quimeltue, which is a project from Chile, and it utilizes illustrations to teach the Mapuche or Mapudungun language spoken in Chile and parts of Argentina. This project is a collaboration between a Mapuche primary school teacher named Victor Carilaf and a Chilean illustrator who is also learning the Mapudungun language. And so it's a way for him to learn while he helps his colleague create these interesting illustrations. So they share illustrations depicting Mapuche culture, utilizing the native language on several social media channels such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They make all of their material available under free licenses and encourage other teachers and students to download the content so they could continue learning. So this is another interesting project from Paraguay called Guarpar, so Guarani Paraguay. It's a YouTube channel maintained by a small team in Paraguay that provides Guarani language dubbing to clips of popular television shows and movies. Obviously, they aren't doing this dubbing in partnership with any of the major movie or television companies, but this is a way, again, doing it themselves. But what they produce really has a high quality professional feel to it. So it's a way to provide the Guarani language content for those seeking popular culture. So you can see Star Wars, Forrest Gump, and you could find it on YouTube. This is a project from Nigeria called the Yoruba Names Project. It's an online documentation project that promotes the transfer of language and cultural resources in the Yoruba language of Nigeria through an online database of Yoruba names and their meanings. The project founder also worked to ensure that the tone markers that are used when writing Yoruba online can be more easily written, as many keyboards do not support these unique characters. Hablemos Quechua, which is a project that means let's speak Quechua. It's a Twitter account that combines automated bots with the personal management of the Twitter account. It was created out of a collaboration with native Quechua speakers and software developers in Peru. And the account has more than 11,000 followers. And it tweets out new phrases and words in the language every day. And so someone following the language can learn the language on their Twitter. And there's an interesting quiz function to it as well. So something you learned previously comes up later in your feed, so you could test your knowledge and how much you've retained. This is another one in Asia. It's a project called Basa Bali, based in Indonesia, that's been working to promote the Balinese language through the maintenance of an online wiki, where community members can upload words for their dictionary, as well as online word games and other educational resources. However, perhaps one of the most interesting projects is the creation of a Balinese superhero comic, which celebrates the Balinese culture and language, and at the same time attracts the attention of young readers. I forgot to put the picture on that, but I can share that later. Radio Yuyum is an online radio station broadcasting from Yucatan, Mexico, that promotes the Maya Yucateco language as a way to strengthen the Mayan identity. Through music, news, and discussions about civic, social, cultural, and rights-related topics for the Maya people, the radio has a strong social media presence, announcing when the next transmission will be. So they don't have like a frequency on the radio, but it's all online, all on the radio. So people who may have migrated to United States or other countries, they could still connect with their region and their language this way. It's an interesting tool called Storyweaver. It's to produce ebooks or electronic books that allow speakers of indigenous languages to create electronics books by either uploading original material or also translating stories that are available in other languages and cultures. So all of the books are available as openly licensed material, with the goal of making books easy to use, but also to create. And that can be used in a variety of different electronic formats or printed versions. So this is Global Voices in Aymara. Our organization, Global Voices, also has a project that brings news from around the world that shines light on stories from different parts of the world that may be underrepresented in the mainstream media. So many of these stories are then translated into one of 40 different languages, like Aymara, but we also have Global Voices in Turkish, which is interesting. But however, like the site in Aymara is one of the very few that are available in indigenous languages on the site. So it's comprised of volunteers that choose what stories they want to translate because they think that this is important for their community to learn about. Because sometimes news in those languages aren't available in those languages. It's often local news in those languages, but to learn about, you know, what's happening in Turkey or what's happening in Germany or South Africa in their language is very unique. So we really enjoy the site. In Canada, again, moving around a bit, there's many young people who are using social media to create awareness campaigns, encouraging others to use their language on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and uniting these postings with a common hashtag called Speak Gwich'in to Me. And so you could find all the different postings with that same hashtag. And then there's another group from the Gitsan community, which is in British Columbia. They started a Facebook group called Gitsan Got Talent. It's, I'm not sure if they have this show in Turkey, but it's a show that where contestants share the unique talents on television. And so that's sort of in the same vein. However, here the contest encourages participants to make a recording of themselves using the language, where they could compete for prizes, making it a fun way to encourage language learning during a time when many people are at home because of the pandemic. There are currently 4 official versions of Wikipedia in indigenous languages of Latin America: Nahuatl, Quechua, Aymara, and Guarani. And there's an additional 30 or so versions in the incubator phase, meaning that they are in the test phase, as they are working towards translating the software, recruiting new editors, and adding new content required to become an official project. So Rising Voices did a mapping research project to take a closer look at the opportunities and the challenges for these Wikipedia projects in native languages of Latin America. There are significant challenges for that, and you know, I think the framework of Wikipedia may not always fit into, you know, an indigenous worldview and how they share knowledge and information. So it's an interesting thing to look at, but it's not always as relevant for many communities. So that could be a whole separate talk in itself. So the Mozilla Foundation, which is the foundation that works with the Firefox web browser, as well as other platforms that are all available in open source formats, meaning that it allows anyone to translate or localize the software into their own language. There's an online translation platform that receives support from free software enthusiasts from the community. The browser is now available in many different indigenous languages of Latin America, thanks to the work of volunteers. There's a collective called Mozilla Nativo that provides technical support for these translators, helping to build community, encouraging more localization of these platforms. So a couple of years ago, Rising Voices and other partners have been organizing different social media campaigns to commemorate International Mother Language Day, which is celebrated on February 21st. Previously, we did a Tweet in Your Mother Language campaign that attracted widespread participation as a way to encourage a linguistically diverse internet. And in 2017 and 2018, we helped organize a Mother Language Meme Challenge campaign, which was a fun way to include a visual element by the creation of internet memes in endangered, indigenous, and other minority languages. We received a lot of interesting participation from around the world, and it was a really fun way to also meet other groups who are doing similar work. And so in 2019, for the International Year of Indigenous Languages, Rising Voices organized a series of other social media campaigns that included a rotating Twitter account. So each week, a different language activist or advocate became a host of the account. They would change the avatar picture to their own, and we would conduct a short interview with each one prior to their start, but let them, you know, tell their own story and about the story of their language online. So in this way, they didn't need to wait for, the media to come and interview them to cover their work, but they could share directly with a very diverse audience to share their challenges, their approaches to addressing these challenges, as well as their own personal path to this language work. So our first campaign took place in Latin America with an account called Act Lenguas, Language Activists, and we're going to be starting the third year of that later this month. So this is probably the most successful in terms of visibility. We have about 15,000 followers. It was promoted by Twitter Mexico as a account that people should follow if they're interested in this work. And so it's a really interesting activity. We've done similar campaigns in North America with the United States and Canada with Native American and First Nations language activists. We've also done a similar campaign in Africa, and also one in Asia as well. Asia is a very broad region with include many different languages and kind of bridge languages. So the communication to coordinate those was very challenging, but we've met a lot of interesting people from many parts, especially from Southeast Asia and South Asia. And our hope too is to start a new campaign that covers European minority and regional languages too. So an important part of this campaign is getting to know each of the different hosts. And so as I mentioned, we do an interview with each of them so we could get to know them about their background, about the state of their language offline and online, what they plan to tweet about, but also about their motivation and hopes and dreams for the language. And so that's probably one of the best parts of this campaign is getting to know them and their stories. And so I'd like to maybe read some of their quotes so that you get a better sense of who some of these people are. Hermani from Quechua, Quechua speaker from Peru, he said that my activism is to claim the right we have to use our mother tongues in our countries. Although Quechua was made official in 1975, this fact was symbolic. It did not become tangible in reality. As the Bolivian academic Javier Albo once said, Quechua is an oppressed language. I dream that at some point my language will be used at the same level as Spanish, in education at all levels, with respect and without discrimination to its speakers. That in schools, colleges, and universities that it is taught, that Quechua is taught. That this recognition of the language will allow us to exercise the right we have to our language and will show the legacy of our Quechua culture in the Andes of South America. Yasmin Novello, she's a Maya speaker from Mexico and involved with the Radio Yuyum project. She talked about, I dream of being able to live in my language so that those who come after me can do so the same. For this, it's important to value our language as suitable for use at any time. It is not a language of the past. It is an ancestral language with all the capacity to be named in the world of today. That's why it's important to speak it on the street, but also on the digital channels. Today's Maya lives everywhere, and our language can too. Marco Martinez from Mexico, he speaks the Mije language. Talks about, my motivation is that speakers of a native language can have the same opportunities in education, health, justice, among others, and not suffer discrimination. For this, I consider the dissemination of linguistic diversity to be important. To the extent that we are aware of this diversity, we will be able to coexist and live in a better way. I dream that my language can be found in different spaces and that we are the same speakers who are interested in doing more activities in favor of our language. As a part of his project called Kumuntun, he dreams that he can inspire other languages, communities, and other groups to do other activities in favor of their own native languages. Margot Camones, she's from Peru, speaks the Ancash dialect of Quechua. She says that her greatest motivation is the love of the Quechua language and all of the existing languages, because I consider that they are a civic exercise. They are heritage, and above all, it is a way of life that I assume as a social responsibility of my people, my town, my parents, and my grandparents. I dream that my language is empowered in every space, that digital media can be our allies, that there are many people spreading their language by whatever means, that the social problems that afflict us today are addressed from the perspective of culture and language. I dream that in schools there are no longer excuses not to teach Quechua, that the authorities are truly Quechua and provide resources to promote research in native languages, and that there is a budget from public institutions to have information on web pages and other media about care for the language. And then finally from Guatemala, Miguel Angel Oclac. He's a Cachiquel speaker from Guatemala, talking about his work. He says, "Here we work towards a multilingual internet, an internet that is a reflection of the heterogeneity of human society, an internet that does not force me to change languages in order to interact with it. An internet in which, like Maya Cachiquel, I can develop a digital life in my own language, and that moving to another language or other languages is by my own decision and not by linguistic imposition. And just like the internet, as well as the physical, community experience of the language can be that we can live our own lives in our own languages, but we always have the opportunity to live the language of our ancestors and that we can enforce that." So that's just an example of 5 or 6 of the, right now it's maybe about 100 people that have worked in these different campaigns. So each with their own unique perspective and kind of approach to the language. And obviously each language has its own unique context and challenges, but I think as we saw in those quotes, that is very, very much based on a similar commitment and passion for the language and being an active member of making sure that the language is celebrated. So what have we seen in these past several years working in this field? Technology certainly has opened the doors for greater digital participation by Indigenous communities. With the decreasing costs and increased availability and quality of devices like smartphones, it's much easier to record, document sights and sounds. More communities are connected to the internet than ever before, offering the potential for direct connections to like-minded people, regardless of geographic location. And critics that say that this technology goes hand in hand with globalization and can also be blamed for, a lot of this language loss. It is estimated that 85% of the internet is dominated by the top 10 languages used online, leaving little room for the other 6,000 or so. Most of the content consumed in Latin America is available in Spanish, and there's little incentive for popular platforms or media companies to produce content in these languages, as most members of the indigenous groups also speak some Spanish. So many of the digital activists determined to use their language online face other types of challenges, including technical ones, such as the absence of keyboards, capable of reproducing the characters of their alphabets on a computer or mobile screen. Languages with a primarily oral tradition, whose orthography and usage are not yet standardized, also face obstacles such as consensus building, disagreements about whether to adopt an academic or formal writing style, or go with a more popular, pragmatic use of the language that's heard every day in the street. There's also, many of those forms of speaking on the street use words in Spanish as well. So it's sort of a hybrid mix that it still allows for the continuation of the language, but then there's also critics that say that this only hurts the language even more. So there's ongoing debate about that in many communities. The coining and acceptance of new terminology can also be difficult in the absence of a governing body to ratify and promote the adoption of new words. Yet, these are also common problems, and digital activists we've seen are learning from others who are finding pragmatic solutions to overcome or circumvent these challenges. So this is another potentially longer talk as well, but I just wanted to talk some about some of the challenges we've seen, over this work. So a little bit about like moving forward. What are the next steps? I think one thing that is clear from our interactions with local networks of digital activists, again, that they're not waiting around for others to assume, what they feel like is their role to create content, but also teach others. Sometimes they struggle to get others to see the value of their work and to show that it's having an impact. For example, how do the people who localize the Firefox browser into the tricky language of Mexico, how do they know if, when, and how it's being used? One method certainly would be to convince policymakers and other local officials of the benefits of having this browser, and encouraging the promotion of its adoption by asking for the browser to be installed, for instance, on computers in local schools or libraries. But sometimes that's much easier said than done in terms of convincing others that this is valuable. To make meaningful change, however, this kinds of grassroots work needs to be part of an overall strategy of language promotion and revitalization. Technology is not a panacea that will magically solve all the issues related to language loss, but it's merely one part of an approach that includes academic research, language courses and immersion, public and private policy making on local, national, and international levels. But more often than not, digital activists, are not well represented at the table. Often because of their youth. Sometimes they're seen as too young to know any better, that they're just doing this for fun, but rather they don't see the deep understanding of the local context, the command of the language, and an understanding of digital technology. And so I think they're the perfect advocates for the language, and it can be a major part of an overall strategy. So it's a long-term process, but it needs to start somewhere and be inclusive. And I think indigenous language digital activism can be one place to begin. So many of you are aware that in 2019, the world celebrated the International Year of Indigenous Languages. This year-long awareness campaign managed by UNESCO sought to increase understanding, reconciliation, and international cooperation, creation of favorable conditions for knowledge sharing and dissemination of good practices with regards to indigenous languages, integration of indigenous languages into standard setting, empowerment through capacity building, and growth and development through elaboration of new knowledge. So Rising Voices was a civil society partner in this recent campaign, and we worked to draw attention to the work of language digital activists. And kind of the response to this campaign was favorable, and I think it was apparent that this type of work needed much more than a year to really move the needle on this. So at the end of 2019, the United Nations declared that there would be an international decade starting in 2022. And we're really pleased by some of the information that came out of that kind of planning process. And so in February 2020, there was a UNESCO meeting held in Mexico City. And there was a declaration that came out from that meeting. And one of the sections recognized the importance of the role of digital activists in helping meeting their goals. And it recommended that there needs to be promotion of networks of digital activists and champions for the teaching and learning of indigenous languages, as well as the exchange of best practices related to this use of technology. So I think that was really kind of inspiring to see how the work of these young people are now being recognized on a much kind of institutional level. And I think it provides even more opportunities for them to play a bigger role in teaching and sharing their knowledge. And because of that a little bit, Rising Voices will be working on on the production of a language digital activism toolkit that'll help build kind of a roadmap, not a recipe, but rather kind of a roadmap for communities that wish to incorporate technology in the internet in their language promotion needs. And so, we've spoken a little bit with the organizer of your project to see how we can incorporate your input as well into the development of this resource, because we want this to be as inclusive as possible. And I think it's important to have languages from your region be represented in this. So again, we're really excited to learn from you and to explore how we could support your efforts in promoting your languages and cultures online. And I really appreciate the time, and this was kind of a really quick look at some of the work we do. I have 100 more examples to show, but I think I wanted to give you a taste of what can be possible and ways that communities can learn from one another. And that's what I think Rising Voices will hopefully help connect groups in the future. So thank you very much.
Hi, Eddie. Thank you for the speech. It was certainly very motivational to hear about the digital activism conducted in South America. Well, there's still a way to go and many to be done to preserve these languages. Çevrilmiyor mu Türkçe?
Hangi kanaldasın?
Ben İngiliz kanalındayım.
Ben duyamadım ki bir dakika.
Sorry, we think there's a problem with the translation, so that's why she just.
Well, let me start again so that people can hear. As I was saying, thank you for the speech, and it was very, certainly very motivational to hear about the digital activism conducted in South America. Well, there's still a way to go and many to be done to preserve these languages. And here in Turkey, we certainly have a very long way to go. However, our wish is to cooperate with organizations such as Rising Voices and the representatives of endangered languages in the other countries in order to share experience and knowledge and be engaged in advocacy activities and develop tools to this end. And we as the Laz Institute have already joined your project on developing digital activism tools. So please, let's stay in touch, and thank you for being with us today. And if there are any questions, please, let's take the questions. Well, I would also like to take this opportunity to mention about the Endangered Languages Network we have established as a part of the Laz and Circation Civil Societies Network. As a part of this network, we are actually, well, we have established and we are enlarging in the network of representatives and civil societies from Turkey on endangered languages in Turkey, such as the Laz and Georgian, Circation, Zaza, Pomak, başka?
Zazaca, Süryanice.
Yes, Syriac and Hemşin, Romeyka, and the others. And our aim is to broaden this network and also be engaged in activities in order to save our indigenous languages. And I think Mandana has a question. Thank you, Mandana.
Hi, Eddie. It's nice to see you. Thank you for the presentation. That was really, really amazing to see the broad kind of work you're doing, so many different kinds of activities and projects. One of the things that I'm wondering is really the peer-to-peer network. Could you like elaborate how that works? So you connect communities or like activists from different groups to each other and they support each other?
Yeah, I think a lot of this started with the in-person meetings where we just facilitated a space for people to get to know each other. And obviously, in-person events, once they go back home, it's much easier to connect virtually. I mean, that's one way, but now it's not always possible, especially now, to come together. And I think one of the roles for Rising Voices is to be a connector. And so I think you kind of like, you know, like a kind of a directory in my mind, like who's doing what. Mm-hmm. And so if someone comes to me, it's like, I'm really interested in, you know, making animation or making like something. I say, oh, you should talk to this person. Mm-hmm. And I would introduce them, mm-hmm. and then kind of get out of the way and let them figure it out. But we've seen those connections carry on. And I think, yes, internet is helpful for that. But I think it needs like a spark, whether it's meeting in person or having someone, not necessarily us, but someone connecting them. Yeah. And I think continue to find other spaces to do that. So I think many workshops that maybe I've been, there's a desire to keep in touch, mm-hmm. or like, oh yeah, we'll keep in touch. You know, we see them once, we never see them again. Yeah. But it needs to be like an intentional kind of constant, like, okay, checking in with them, you know, even commenting on social media posts so they, I don't know, just kind of remain in touch somehow. Yeah. So that's kind of, yeah.
We see that, you know, we do a training and then after the training, everyone wants to stay in touch and they want to have a platform. And then it takes like a couple of weeks and then they have like a WhatsApp group and they're like posting like crazy. And then after like 2-3 months or something, you know, life hits and then it drizzles out. And we don't have the capacity to keep things going because we're going to the next group of people and whatnot. So it's really because creating the network is so important because we are always a hierarchy in a way, right? When we come in and whatnot. But that's why I think this peer network is really, really, really key and important. When we do training, we get our grantees together and it's like 15, 20 people from all over the world working on different languages. And they then stay in touch and then they help each other. And that's way more productive than when we come in, right? We are there too, but in the background with this whole London and blah, blah, blah. So I think this peer-to-peer network is really, but it's also affords a lot of like constant interaction, right? That you keep going through Rising Voices.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone who's been part of different events stay in touch, which is fine. I mean, that's obviously understandable, but I think half or 60% stay. And so it's kind of builds. And I think one of the challenges and one of the things we don't really want to do is connect different regions as well. I mean, I would love to find a way, whether it's a interpreter to connect Latin America activists with languages and Turkey activists. I mean, I think we would need a linguistic barrier, but it's been done. We've done it from between Mexico and Canada, for example. But the continued contact is a little bit difficult because of the language. But I think someday there'll be a way to have kind of constant, you know, linguistic facilitation. I don't know. But I think
I have another question, and that is related to the role of an individual in a network. It's like the kind of, what I'm wondering is the champion part, right? So you showed us beautiful examples of projects and whatnot. And it seemed from what you talked about is that there's one young woman or one young man or one young person or that is like running with it, with your support. And then that because has a domino effect, but it's still a core person that is the spark. Is that how it mostly works? Because I mean, how many things are group projects, or it's more like, how does that work? Because
yeah, I mean, a lot of it is individual, but many of them have formed their own projects that recruit others to join them. And so it is, a lot of it is grassroots. And kind of going back to the topic of how much impact that they could have, it's really interesting to see the evolution of this. When we started in 2014 in Oaxaca with this first gathering, you know, we're talking 7 years later, and many of them are now taking leadership opportunities, roles in their community, not related to technology. I know one friend is now in charge of like the health committee of their community, but now they have a seat at the table so they can represent kind of and you know, other people are taking roles in municipal governments. Another friend is now working for the Ministry of Culture in El Salvador. And so I think as they grow, they have more of an influence to be able to do, because I think it's a common kind of frustration, you know, in many communities, youth have very little voice to make bigger decisions in the community. I mean, I think it varies from place to place. But I think we're seeing more of a ripple effect, that they attract more people. They have their own network. I mean, many have formed networks of their own state or their own region. That's great. I mean, the more the merrier. I think the more networks that there can be, the more kind of a spread. And again, it's much more powerful when they learn from other people than they learn from someone like me. So I think, again, I'm the facilitator as much as needed, but I think at some point I won't be needed anymore, which is great, that all these networks will continue to, that's my hope.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks for the questions.
I have a question.
May I ask a question? Hi, Eddie. Firstly, thank you very much for the presentation. Well, I've got a question, like, I'm wondering your personal opinion about something. Well, I can talk about, for instance, in Turkey, we know like there are speech communities whose languages are endangered. We see some social concern expressed at the discourse level. However, when it comes to, you know, taking actions, for instance, or movements like you have mentioned, rising from the individuals themselves, such as grassroots movements, well, you see that some cases are quite silent. Or not responding to this sort of concerns in an active way. So in those cases, to be able to, you know, activate, trigger these social concerns expressed at the discourse level into an action level, what might be good starting points from your own experience and, you know, observations? Would you have any specific, you know, opinions or suggestions in that sense?
I mean, I think something we're always looking at is impact. I think, you know, in many, you know, maybe development projects or like bigger projects, they always want to know what your impact will be. And I think, you know, many people we worked with at the beginning maybe got caught up on, I want my work to have this broader impact where change happens on the government level or something. But I think that can be quite frustrating. It could be maybe not as realistic as possible. So I think impact can be very broad. You know, if you start doing this work and you encourage your friend to, you know, celebrate their language or to be using their language more often, I mean, that's an impact right there. I mean, it may not be, you know, a public policy impact, but I think there's like a saying in English where every journey starts with a single step, you know? So I think you need to start somewhere. That it may not get you very far right away, but I think it's a marathon. It's something that's long-term. A lot of this is the result of centuries or decades or whatever of actions that led to their language not being recognized or used on a daily basis. So I think, from what I've seen, at least, my opinion, that it's just part of a bigger movement, that maybe we won't see the effects in their lifetime or in the generation, but I think they're setting the foundation for changes in the future. And I think, again, this group in El Alto, Bolivia, I've known them since 2007. So we're talking about 14 years where they're now working at a local television station where they're broadcasting the news in Aymara. So if we would have thought at that 2007, I think everyone like, oh, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. But it's sort of the result of many different steps and getting more people interested. It's just, I think we can like approach it that way, as thinking what's going to happen, but just start working to include as many people as possible and celebrating smaller victories that will eventually add up. I guess that's my thought on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Well, I have a question. Now, there are representatives of different endangered languages here. How can we contribute to your digital activism tool project as people?
So I think we'll have a survey, which we'll get this in Turkish so that we can reach more people. But basically, they hear your needs and your attitudes, what you think are like the biggest challenges for potential digital activism in your language. So I think, again, even though I've been fortunate to be able to go to Istanbul a couple of times, but I can't claim to know much more beyond that in terms of what the realities are for different communities. So this would be really helpful to contribute to that kind of needs assessment. And then, and I think hearing your story is really important. I think that's making this much more personal, and that it's not kind of one size fits all, but rather finding common denominations across regions, but understanding there's local contexts, different challenges. And so that's going to be something we really want to make sure that we consider different regions, different parts of the world. And then working through with the partners, organizations that continue that conversation.
Thank you, Eddie.
If there isn't any other questions from anyone, I would like to ask one. But if there's anything else, I can always ask any questions, so that's fine. If I'm not interrupting, though, is that okay, Elam? No? Okay, because I can't see. Right, okay. So thank you so much, Eddie, for the talk. It was brilliant. My question, I guess, is about, so you've been doing this for about, I don't know, 10, 15 years at this point, isn't it? Like Rising Voices started around 2007.
I mean, our first experience with this in 2007, even though we didn't really know what it was back then. I mean, really, again, that's similar. We didn't know where this would lead to, and we certainly didn't call it digital activism back then.
Absolutely.
It was just rather communication in one's own language.
Yeah. So my question, I suppose, is more about, I mean, there's like a decade of sort of activism. And I suppose what I'm wondering is, in terms of its sustainability, what do you think, do you think the results you're seeing now are sustainable, or do you think it's just like, it looks up to like one person, and if that person disappears, the movement will maybe die again? Or that sort of like, is there that sort of fear that this won't go on its own or not? Basically, that would be my question.
I mean, sustainability is sometimes hard to define, not necessarily financial sustainability, but I think in this case, it's more about ensuring that it continues on.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that in many languages where there a new generation that's moving towards this field. Like, for example, the Aymara example, I met these friends of mine who are university students back in 2007. So we're talking about 14 years later. Many of them have, you know, families, they have jobs. They don't have the same time that they had when they were university students. But I think their work is now encouraging a new generation. So since then, I would say 5 or 6 new projects, unrelated, have popped up. Now, can we say that it was a cause? I mean, did they cause that, or was it kind of a correlation? But I really think that because of their work, they set the foundation that more people are more confident and, you know, proud to use their language online. So I think they're, again, I keep calling them pioneers, that they really help, you know, clear the way for others to do that. So, but I think now, so I think there's more and more young people. When I say young people, teenagers, you know, even at our first Mexico conference, we had a 14-year-old boy come. He didn't, I think he purposely changed his age, like to 18 or something, because he didn't think we would accept him. But you know, he came and he was great, and now he's now 21, and now he's doing his own projects in his community. He's setting up a university in his community to teach you know, different subjects in the Zapotec language. And so I really think there needs to be kind of that mentality of specifically working with young people so that they can feel they're a part of that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I do find that, sorry for interrupting, I do find that young people are more and more opening up to their identity and languages. In fact, perhaps their parents are thinking, what are you going to do with this language? You can't use it like in the education world, you can't use it in the employment world. So what are you going to do with it? But nowadays, young people are coming and telling us that, look, this is my language, so I want to learn it. And definitely the social media has been very influential as well, because the smartphone ownership in Turkey is very high, and also people go into social media a lot, especially Facebook and more Twitter these days. And even though they can't express their feelings, their thoughts openly, if you see them face to face, through social media, they feel more free to express their beliefs, which is very strong. It's very strong at the moment. If you were to ask people to come and meet up in a meeting room, maybe they would have fears, but in the social media, it's not like that. So it's very influential. And I have a question. What do you think is the most powerful social media channel or medium at the moment?
I mean, I think that's difficult to say. I think each country, each community has their own preferred platform that they use. I mean, I think, I don't know if I could answer that. I think it's not for me to say. I think everyone decides. I think a part of this toolkit that we want to, you know, pull together, we want to help people decide for themselves which is the right tool to use. You know, if, for example, if they want to reach adolescents, you know, maybe TikTok or Instagram is kind of the way to go. If they want to reach an audience that is, you know, more uses text or uses words more, you know, maybe it's a blog or website. So I think it's hard to say, hard to really say what the most powerful one is, but I think each person kind of knows who they want to reach or who they want to work with and where they are. I think your point, like, yes, the internet really helps people find like-minded individuals. And I think, you know, I think you can find others who are doing similar things despite geographic distances and barriers. And I think that's one of the major, obviously, So I mean, kind of in a world where there's so much negativity and really unfortunate things happening online that we all know about, there's still kind of these oases or spaces that are doing really inspiring things. And so I think that's part of it, is to highlight those.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I think yes.
Can I ask a question right now?
Evet, ben de bir soru sormak istiyorum.
Okay. Can I move on? Okay, I am asking. I hope I can express myself effectively. I just wanted to ask you that, do you think social media is the most powerful tool to develop grassroots in these days, especially during the pandemic days?
I think, I mean, I always go back to this, you know, this work with the internet and social media and digital media are just tools, which you just said. But I think the most powerful tool is the individual itself. I think how does society or different groups can support the individual? You know, I think, again, this work is just about the tools. That is, without the individual behind it, I think none of this would be possible. And yeah, obviously, because of the pandemic now, a lot of those interactions, a lot of the, you know, personal development or, you know, just kind of growth of people is much more difficult now. But I think we have to kind of rely on social media and internet because of this situation we're in. So I think easily it could be everything shuts down. We'll pick it back up when we're back to normal. So I think we're really seeing a lot of interesting initiatives happening over these last year because of the pandemic. You know, I think conferences, for example, were really kind of widespread before the pandemic, and we've seen everything move online. That gives people opportunity to learn from one another despite not being able to connect in person. So I think seeing it as an opportunity, as a way to continue this work, but I'd really like to see more ways to continue to develop, you know, kind of those personal growth. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I think finding ways to encourage more people to continue their work in other ways, if that makes sense.
And also, maybe we can say that we are creating new ways to get in touch with people right now, because we are not in usual times, and life is going on besides the pandemic, and we are just creating new things that we can do right now. Thank you for your answer, and thank you for your speech and representation. Good evening.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I'd love to learn a little bit more, like, who's in the room. Could you maybe give like a summary of, or maybe if someone asks a question, they could introduce themselves and say what they're working on or where they're from. I'd really love to learn from you. Maybe could you maybe talk about yourself, Umut?
Me? Okay. I'm a senior student in Ankara University I'm a senior student at Ankara University Faculty of Political Sciences. I will graduate this year. And I just, how can I introduce myself incorrectly? My mother is from, my mother is Laz, that this institute, like this initiatives members. And my father is from another part of Turkey, but he is not Laz. So we have some kind of interaction between different cultures in our home. But this has advantages, but also this has different disadvantages too. For example, my mother can speak Laz not very fluently, but she can speak, but I cannot. And I feel very sorry about that, because as we talk about languages are dying day by day because new generations don't know how to speak that. And I wanted to break this chain actually for myself, let's say. And this meeting is very helpful to develop our perspectives in this topic. So I would like to thank you, this institute, and for you and Mandana and Betül also. And I can say this, actually, I speak too much, I think. Thank you for your listening.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
Eylem, I think we have one question from Bayrame, I think.
Evet, ben de bir soru istiyorum. Evet.
Buyurun Bayram Bey.
Merhaba hepinize tekrar. Edi'ye de çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Güzeldi. Yani çok güzel açılımlar, çok güzel çalışmalar izledik. Ben ona subjektif özel bir şey sormak istiyorum. Biz Pomaklarız, Türkiye'de yaşayan Pomaklar ve Balkanlardan, Bulgaristan'dan 130-140 yıl önce gelmişiz. 100 yıllık bir kopukluk var ata topraklarıyla ve ben son konuşan nesilim, benim çocuklarım konuşmuyor. Şimdi gençleri bir türlü harekete geçiremiyoruz. 10-12 yıldır aktif çalışıyoruz. Gençlere dokunacak, onları Pomakça'ya ilgi çekecek, Pomakça Güney Stav Dilleri grubundan ve 40-50 milyon kişi konuşuyor. Bütün Balkan ülkeleri konuşuyor. Sırplar, Yugoslavya ülkeleri, Bulgaristan, Makedonya. Bu konuda bir tecrübesi var mı? Gençleri, yani sosyal medyayı kullanacağız, internet, ama bir tecrübesi bir ülkeden, bir yerden bu 100 yıllık kopukluğu gideren işte böyle bir önerisi olabilir mi acaba? Subjektif, Pomaklara bir ateş yaksın, bize bir şey söyle, bir kurşun sıkalım, bizi harekete geçirsin. Bir tecrübesi, önerisi olabilir. Çok selam söylüyorum Bolivya'ya, Edi'ye. Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, from being a young person myself many years ago, I know sometimes young people are stubborn. Having a 5-year-old daughter, I know sometimes if you say this is good for you, that they say they want to do the opposite. So I think for me, our approach to the work is to show what others are doing, what other young people around the world or other, like, you know, show that there's comic books in different languages that young people are making. They're making rap music in their language. I think just showing, maybe in not a more subtle way, like this is happening, and if they want to do it, then they'll move it. So I think there might be some pushback in terms of, you know, encouraging them to learn the language. But I think kind of our approach is to show what's happening elsewhere, so that they feel like this is something they want to do, that there are certainly ways to help that. So I understand. I think that's a similar case in many parts of the world, that the appeal of other languages are stronger. And then, yeah, it's difficult to reverse or to stop, you know, societal or, you know, social attitudes about languages. So, I mean, I think, you know, here in Bolivia, and I think, you know, you have to recognize that having, you know, the first indigenous president in 2005 be elected, that really helped in some ways, you know, people feeling like their language is a language of the present and the future. So I think that's a major part of it. That goes beyond what many of us can do in terms of creating, you know, role models. And I mean, even kind of going back to, you know, so kind of my personal background, you know, my parents are Bolivian immigrants who went to the United States, many years ago. And I remember my feeling like I didn't want to learn Spanish because I didn't want to feel different than my classmates who were all from Latin America. And so I understand that. And I think if I had, you know, some of the information that I wanted to see in Spanish, then it might have been different. Or if I had a role model who was closer to my age, because I mean, I remember kind of resisting my parents at the time because I was young. And so I think a lot, it's a very major question, but I think there are steps that could be taken, but I think a lot of it is finding things that are interesting to them, finding others who are more like them, to maybe encourage them or start a spark. So I don't know if that's been helpful.
Teşekkürler, not aldım.
Any more questions?
Ben soru değil ama bir şeyler söyleyebilir miyim? Merhabalar. Teşekkür ediyorum öncelikle konuşmanız için. Demin Bayram Bey'di, Pomakça'dan bahsedince yani aklımda direkt çağrışanlar şu oldu benim. Ben yabancı dil olarak Türkçe öğretmeniyim ve aynı zamanda hikaye anlatıcısıyım. 70'in üzerinde ülkeden öğrencim oldu bugüne kadar. Onlara Türkçe öğretiyorum. Birçoğu da göç yoluyla Türkiye'ye geldiler. Kimisi üniversiteyi okuyup gidecekler, kimisi de burada kalıcı, savaş yoluyla gelmiş olanlar birçoğu da. Şimdi Türkiye'deki dillere baktığımız zaman kaybolmaya yüz tutan dillere özellikle bunları sadece yani geçmişiyle de o tarihten de bağımsız olarak bilemeyiz. Çünkü göç varsa orada bir travma da vardır. Şu anda göç ve travma çalışıyorum ben. Orada bir travma da vardır. Travmatik durumlar olunca bu dili öğrenmeye de bir ket vuruyor. Belki de aileler bunu dile getirmiyorlar ama bu kuşaktan kuşağa sessiz bir şekilde bu travmalar aktarılıyor zaten. Oradaki o travmalar çözülmeden belki de dili öğrenmenin önündeki engeller de çözülmeyebiliyor. Bu sadece küçük bir bakış açısı. Demin sosyo dil bilim denilen bir şeyden bahsettiniz. Tam olarak bilmiyorum. Üniversitede sadece 2 kredilik bir dil bilimi dersi almıştık. Bu kadar derinlere girmedik. Ama göç varsa dediğim gibi orada bir farklılık durumu, travmatik bir durum da geliyor ve Türkiye toprakları, Anadolu toprakları travmatik topraklar, bunu kabul etmemiz gerekiyor. O yüzden belki de birazcık bu açıdan da bakmak, kendi tarihimizle, geçmişimizle yüzleşmek, sonrasında da kabul etmek çok kolay değil bunları söylemek. Çok klasik söylemler belki ama sarılmak, aslında kendimize sarılmak, sarıldıktan sonrası da işte dijital aktivizmi de geliyor bunun. Farklı şeyleri de geliyor. Diye düşünüyorum. Hani olayın böyle de bir boyutu var. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a good point. I think just really quickly, again, I think our approach is that we want the communities to say that this is communities or individuals say that this is a priority for them or something that they want, you know, and it's never an imposition. We understand there's other pressing needs, especially when you talked about, you know, conflict situations, refugees, things like that, where, you know, creating memes or creating something in their language is not necessarily, you know, the top priority. It's you know, survival or just kind of, so again, I think a lot of this is based off, I mean, all of it's based off what the community needs and says that's important for them at this time. You know, I think that's a really important message that I wanted to send, that I think there's a time for everything.
There's one more question from Kocada Association.
Kocada.
Yes.
Öncelikle merhaba. Şimdi Edi Bey şey söyledi. Bolivya'da 6 resmi dilin olduğunu. Bu 6 resmi dil eğitimde nasıl uygulanıyor? Kendi dilinin şu anda ülkesinde ne durumda? Teşekkürler, sağ olun.
Yes. So in Bolivia, there's 36 different languages. I don't know if that was 36 different official languages. Some of them, like Aymara, has, maybe 1 million speakers. I don't have the numbers right now, but Aymara, Quechua, and Guarani, which are the three of the languages that have the most number of speakers. And so in each of those languages, there's actually a university for those communities in their language. But there's other languages that may have, 20,000 speakers or even 500 speakers. And so the resources and, even though in theory all languages are the same, in practice, there may not be the resources available or the different groups of speakers similar. And so I think that is a major challenge for here. For each of those 36 different languages, there's also an institute that's being created from the government to encourage the creation of educational materials, just to be like a resource center. We've tried to get in touch with many of them, kind of to see how we could collaborate with them. But I think their priority is more, which is fine, is still kind of the traditional educational methods of creating textbooks, training teachers, so that there is bilingual, bicultural education here. So I think it's a challenge, but I think there's opportunity here because it's a very diverse country. It's often difficult because of the terrain. Bolivia is a very geographically diverse in terms of terrain. There's mountains, there's jungle, there's desert, there's valleys, and some of the communities are very rural. It's very difficult to get to, and so supporting them in their language work is often difficult. But I think a lot of that is the government's role in that. But I think of the kind of communities we worked with, we know the most in Aymara, Quechua, and Guarani, which are the languages that are most spoken in the country and have kind of a more unique conditions where they, a lot of the young people are university students, so they come to the city to study. They have access to internet. They have access to, other like-minded people, and so maybe those languages have a little more of a leg up because of those circumstances.